The old race car sat beneath layers of dust, rust, and decades of silence, abandoned in the darkest corner of a luxury estate. Wealthy collectors laughed as they walked past it. Experts barely gave it a second glance. Then the richest men in the room casually dismissed it with one sentence that echoed through the hall like a final verdict. He declared that the forgotten machine wasn't even worth the cost of hauling it away. Everyone believed him. Everyone except one exhausted single father who saw something no one else did. 7 days later, the same car stunned the world when it crossed the auction block for $8 million, changing one man's life forever and proving that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden beneath the deepest layers of doubt. Before we begin, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Beyond Single Dad. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this to life. Morning sunlight poured through the cracked windows of the prestigious Blackwood Estate auction house as dozens of collectors wandered through rows of priceless antiques. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light across polished marble floors while expensive watches flashed beneath tailored sleeves. Every visitor seemed to know exactly what they were looking for. Every visitor except Rowan Mercer. 38 years old, worn down by life, and raising his 9-year-old son, Kian, alone after losing his wife 3 years earlier, Rowan wasn't searching for luxury. He was searching for survival. During the day, Rowan repaired engines in a tiny neighborhood garage that barely stayed open. At night, he drove delivery routes just to keep food on the table. Sleep had become a luxury he could no longer afford. Every dollar mattered because every dollar meant another meal, another school supply, another chance to keep his son's dreams alive. When the auction company hired temporary workers to clean the estate before the sale, Rowan accepted without hesitation. As he swept dusty corners and carried old furniture toward storage, he noticed something unusual beneath a faded canvas. Curiosity pulled him closer. Carefully lifting the heavy fabric, he uncovered an old racing car covered in grime. Moss clung to the tires. Rust decorated the metal like forgotten scars. Broken leather seats peeked through shattered windows. To everyone else, it looked like junk waiting for the scrapyard. Just then, billionaire investor Victor Halden arrived surrounded by advisors, security guards, and luxury car experts. Every opinion in the room seemed to revolve around his approval. He paused briefly beside the forgotten vehicle before shaking his head with a dismissive smile. He called it worthless and joked that even the cleaning crew wouldn't waste money bidding on such a disaster. Laughter filled the room. The workers lowered their eyes and continued sweeping as though the car had already been erased from history. But Rowan couldn't stop looking at it. Something about the graceful curves beneath the dirt reminded him of photographs his late father had collected. As a child, Rowan had spent countless evenings listening to stories about legendary race cars, forgotten engineering marvels, and hidden treasures overlooked by people chasing obvious riches. His father always said that history leaves fingerprints for those patient enough to notice them. That evening, after finishing work, Rowan returned to the dusty warehouse. With permission to inspect discarded items scheduled for disposal, he studied the faded chassis more carefully. Beneath years of corrosion, he discovered tiny handcrafted details unlike anything found on ordinary vehicles. An old identification plate had nearly disappeared, but one number remained barely visible. His heart began racing. He borrowed books from the public library and spent the entire night researching automotive history while Kian slept beside unfinished homework at the kitchen table. Every page revealed another clue. Every photograph looked more familiar. By sunrise, Rowan realized he might be staring at one of the rarest prototype racing cars ever built before disappearing from public records decades earlier. Still, doubt refused to leave him. He knew experts had already ignored it. Billionaires had laughed at it. What chance did an exhausted mechanic have of being right when the world's wealthiest collectors were convinced otherwise? Yet something stronger than fear whispered that he had to try. The following morning, Rowan gathered every dollar he had saved for emergency expenses. It wasn't much. Selling an old toolbox and postponing several utility bills gave him just enough to place a small bid when the neglected vehicle appeared among miscellaneous storage items. Hardly anyone paid attention. Wealthy buyers were focused on paintings, jewelry, and polished classics displayed beneath bright lights. The forgotten race car sold quietly for less than the price of a used family sedan. Rowan drove it home on a borrowed trailer while neighbors stared in confusion. Some thought he had lost his mind. Others quietly pitied the struggling father wasting precious savings on what appeared to be a pile of rust. Kian never laughed. Instead, he smiled with the same hopeful eyes his mother once had. Together they spent evenings carefully washing away decades of dirt. Every bucket of muddy water revealed another beautiful line hidden beneath the surface. Rowan refused to repaint anything. He believed the car deserved honesty instead of cosmetic perfection. The scratches, dents, and faded paint told a story no restoration could replace. On the fourth day, Rowan contacted an elderly automotive historian named Cedric Vaughn, one of the last living experts specializing in forgotten racing prototypes. Cedric almost declined the invitation until Rowan mentioned the barely visible identification number. Silence followed. Hours later, Cedric arrived carrying old documents and trembling hands. The moment he saw the car, tears gathered in his eyes. He gently brushed away dust from the engine compartment before quietly confirming what Rowan had only dared to hope. The vehicle was an original experimental racing prototype believed destroyed over 60 years earlier. Only one had ever existed. Engineers had created revolutionary innovations decades ahead of their time. Historians searched for it across continents without success. Somehow it had disappeared into a private estate, forgotten by generations who never understood its significance. News spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, collectors across the world requested private inspections. Museums called repeatedly. International auction houses competed for exclusive rights to sell the extraordinary discovery. Television crews crowded Rowan's small driveway while neighbors watched in disbelief. Exactly 7 days after the billionaire dismissed the forgotten car as worthless, Rowan stood inside one of the world's most prestigious collector auctions. Cameras flashed constantly. Reporters whispered predictions. Wealthy bidders filled every seat. The auctioneer began cautiously. The first bid shocked everyone. Then another. Then another. Millions climbed faster than anyone imagined possible. Hands continued rising across the room as international phone bidders joined the competition. Rowan barely heard the numbers anymore. He simply thought about Kian sitting at school, unaware that everything was changing. When the final hammer struck, applause erupted throughout the hall. $8 million. For several seconds Rowan couldn't move. He remembered skipped meals so his son could eat. He remembered repairing broken appliances instead of replacing them. He remembered sitting beside hospital beds holding his wife's hand while promising to keep their little family together no matter what happened. The money wasn't simply wealth. It was freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from unpaid bills. Freedom to finally breathe. Reporters rushed toward him asking how an ordinary mechanic had succeeded where billionaires failed. Rowan answered with quiet humility. He explained that he never saw a worthless car. He only saw something everyone else stopped believing in before taking the time to understand it. Sometimes value isn't hidden beneath dirt. Sometimes it's hidden beneath assumptions. Months later, Rowan reopened his struggling garage as a community training center where teenagers learned mechanical skills free of charge. He created scholarships honoring his late wife, helping single parents pursue better careers while raising children alone. Instead of buying mansions and luxury yachts, he invested in second chances because he knew exactly what they felt like. Victor Halden eventually visited the garage without cameras or reporters. He quietly admitted that wealth had taught him to judge quickly instead of looking carefully. Watching Rowan transform his fortune into hope for others reminded him that true success isn't measured by what we own but by what we choose to lift after we've been blessed. Kian grew up watching his father become something far greater than a millionaire.